Mark Turner is an honest, dedicated, and devoted police officer. He joined the police force right after graduating and always considered his job a noble mission. But what he loves most are the peaceful moments after a hard day's work. Next to his indispensable companion in life, a German Shepherd named Max. Max is not like ordinary dogs. He is a police dog, a great companion during stressful patrol shifts. Trained since he was a puppy, Max quickly became Mark's inseparable friend. They are not only colleagues but also close friends, sharing peaceful moments together. Police officer Mark Turner and Max first met when Mark was looking for a companion to work with on the patrol team. Max was just a puppy at that time with bright eyes, full of intelligence and dreams. He never knew he would find such a loyal and courageous friend. They went through many challenges together, from rigorous training sessions to tense and dangerous chases. During his work, Max was always the best companion Mark could hope for. Early in the morning, Mark often picked Max up at the training area. The dog only needed to see Mark to run over, wagging its tail. Happily, without needing to give orders, Max knew immediately what he needed to do, ready to patrol, to fight, to protect Mark at all costs. That dog, although unable to speak, could understand and react immediately to any situation. One late evening, after a tense patrol, Mark sat alone in the car, looking out the window. The rain fell lightly, blurring everything around him. Max sat next to him, Mark's knee leaning against the dog's warm body. No one said anything, but the atmosphere between them was extremely peaceful. Mark felt a deep connection between himself and Max. No matter how difficult the job was, no matter how challenging life was, as long as Max was by his side, he felt like everything could be overcome. Once, when Mark faced a dangerous situation during an arrest, he was suddenly attacked by a criminal. While Mark was being restrained, Max did not hesitate and rushed to the rescue. The brave dog bit the criminal's hand, pulled Mark out of danger, and helped him defeat the enemy. As Mark sat on the ground, panting and looking at Max, he realized that this was not just a police dog. Max was a true friend, a friend who would never abandon him under any circumstances. The connection between them became stronger over time. Mark did not just consider Max a dog, but a close friend, indispensable protector in life. Every time they went on patrol, he and Max formed an inseparable team with surprising understanding. They understood each other so well that with just a glance or a small movement, they could coordinate perfectly. There were also days when Mark was tired from work. Late nights, or when he had to face stressful cases, made him feel like he was being pushed to the limit. But every time he returned home, Max was the one waiting for him, always ready for a peaceful evening together. The dog wagged its tail, running around him, as if to remind him that all fatigue could disappear when there was this sincere friendship. Mark knew that no matter what, Max would always be there as a solid support, not only in work but also in life. Max didn't need to say a word, but its presence always gave Mark a feeling of absolute security. One quiet evening, Mark sat next to Max, stroking his soft fur, and a deep emotion suddenly welled up in his heart. He thought about all the hardships they had overcome together, about all the dangers Max had protected him from. Mark whispered to himself, "No matter how life changes, Max will always be my most loyal friend." And at that moment, Max raised his head, his bright eyes looking at Mark as if he understood every thought in his heart. Max's look was not only an affirmation of loyalty, but also a promise. "I will always be here, no matter what." The friendship between Mark and Max was not just that between a police officer and a police dog. It was a friendship that transcended everything, a friendship that overcame all challenges, a friendship that would never change. Mark Turner never thought that one day his life would change so drastically. He had devoted his life to serving justice, to protecting the city he loved. And now he was facing a verdict that made his whole world collapse under his feet: the death penalty. It all started on a normal day, when Mark and his team conducted a raid on criminal gangs operating in the city. The situation happened quickly and unexpectedly, and in just a minute, everything changed. During a gunfight with criminals, a bullet hit an innocent civilian, a death that Mark could not forget. This situation quickly turned into an investigation. Evidence, witness statements, and manipulated documents led to the conclusion that Mark was the one who accidentally killed that civilian. The story was quickly amplified by the media, leading the public to believe that he had overreacted and caused his death. Although Mark did not remember the details of the incident and maintained his innocence, the evidence fell into the hands of those who wanted to bring him down. Surveillance cameras, unclear statements, and a series of events that matched, though not exactly, all pointed to him. Although he had no intention of killing, Mark was convicted of manslaughter, and from there, the death penalty was announced. With each passing day in prison, Mark seemed to sink deeper into despair. Not because he feared death, but because he felt betrayed, abandoned by the people he had once trusted. The feeling of betrayal by the legal system he had spent his life serving hurt him more than the punishment he was about to receive. That day, Mark sat in his dark cell, looking out through the small window. Night had fallen, and the silence only added to his sense of loneliness. He couldn't stop thinking about the past, about his friends, about Max, remembering the years when he and Max had patrolled together, faced danger together. Those memories now felt like a distant dream that he couldn't reach. Max, his most loyal friend, had always been a part of Mark's life. And now, without Max by his side, he felt like he was missing an important part of his life. Every night, Mark thought about Max, about the unconditional loyalty that the dog had shown him. He wondered if Max remembered him, if the dog knew that he was facing these dark days. One afternoon, as the light was fading, Mark received a message from Sarah, his old friend from the police force, who had come to visit him. She brought with her some good news, but also some difficult ones. She had discovered some new clues that could help him prove his innocence. Sarah recounted that during her investigation, she had found some dark spots in the case, holes that had been overlooked at first. Some evidence, previously considered irrelevant, could now be the key to unlocking the truth. However, this investigation was not an easy one. Sarah faced many challenges, from threatened defenders of justice to resistance from influential people in society. But most importantly, Sarah did not give up, and her return was a ray of hope for Mark. Max, even though he wasn't there, Mark felt the dog's presence in his heart. He knew that Max would never abandon him, that their friendship would never end. Every time he thought of Max, he felt like there was an invisible source of encouragement that helped him persevere. He began to think that maybe, if he could get out of here, he could resume his journey with Max. Mark was no longer alone. He began to feel support from his friends, from Sarah, and from Max himself, even though the dog couldn't be there in person. However, it wasn't over yet. The evidence was still unclear, and those truly responsible had yet to be exposed. Mark knew he had to keep fighting. He was fighting not just for himself, but for truth and justice. No matter how difficult things were, Mark was determined not to give up. He remembered the promise he made as a police officer, do the right thing no matter what. And that is something Mark will keep throughout his life, no matter the challenges ahead. The death penalty is just the beginning of a long battle. Mark will face many hardships, but deep down, he knows that this fight is not just his fight. It is also a fight to vindicate himself and the values he believes in. The long days in prison only made Mark feel the loneliness seeping into every cell of his body. Sometimes he sat silently, trying to find some comfort in his thoughts, but was torn apart by the image of Max, his loyal friend whom he could no longer be close to. Max was no longer standing beside him every morning, no longer running around when he returned home after a long day. But deep in his heart, Mark knew that the dog never gave up, that Max was still somewhere, always looking at him. He smiled softly every time he thought of Max's grateful look at him, when they had shared so many hardships, so many dangerous chases together. One rainy afternoon, as Mark sat in his cell, a slight noise made him raise his head. The cold iron door of the cell creaked. Sarah, his old friend, stood there with a small smile, although her face showed exhaustion. However, something in her eyes made Mark feel a glimmer of hope again. "Sarah, what's new?" Mark asked in a hoarse voice. He was used to the silence of the room, but now he needed the encouragement of his friends. Sarah moved closer, sitting down opposite Mark. She looked at him with a steady, but also sympathetic gaze. "Everything is going well, Mark. But I still need you here to trust and be patient. I will do everything I can to help you." Mark nodded, although he knew that the difficulties ahead were still great. But Sarah's presence was like a precious spiritual medicine. And then, as if sensing Mark's faith, Sarah added, "There's something important I need to tell you. Max. Max is always there, out there, constantly looking for a way to help you." Mark sighed, feeling touched. Even though he couldn't see Max, even though he couldn't hold his dog's little paws, he felt that unconditional loyalty. Max hadn't given up on him, and no matter how hard things got, the dog was still there, somewhere, a loyal friend who never left. Sarah's story continued, telling of the times Max visited the prison, waiting outside the door as if he knew that Mark would return one day. In the mornings or evenings, Max would still appear in the area near the prison, his eyes always looking towards the gate, as if he knew that one day he would come out, would continue his journey with his dog. This made Mark very touched. His eyes moistened as he thought about the difficult days they had gone through together. Sarah said that every time someone approached and tried to chase Max away, the dog would always protest by not leaving, just standing there waiting. It seemed that Max knew that justice had not been served, and that only when Mark was exonerated would the dog be able to rest in peace. One morning, when Mark woke up, he found letters from his family again. Among those letters, there was a special letter from his father. The letter was short but full of love and patience. "Son, we will not give up. Max is still part of our family, and we will do everything to bring you back." Mark was silent for a moment. The words were simple, but they held great power. He felt the resilience of his family, of Sarah, and especially of Max. As each day passed in his cell, he realized more and more that he was not alone. Max was always there, his wordless friend, but the strongest presence. One day, as Mark sat on his bed, Max appeared in his dream. The image of Max, his eyes full of loyalty and unconditional love, seemed to revive wonderful memories in his heart. He dreamed that he and Max were patrolling, running through the quiet streets in the early morning. Their footsteps blended together. Nothing could stop their steps. When Mark woke up, he felt a new source of energy rising within him. He could not let things end like this, could not let Max, his dog's loyalty, be forgotten. He had to fight, he had to stand, not just for himself, but for Max, his irreplaceable friend in this life. Mark clenched his fists, determined. "I won't give up, Max. I'll go out and we'll fight again like we used to." Max didn't need to say a word. The dog had conveyed everything Mark needed to feel: loyalty and unconditional love. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, their friendship would be strong and unbreakable. The days in prison seemed endless. Mark felt like each moment passed like a century. Although Sarah brought him hopeful news about the investigation, he still felt stuck. However, in Mark's mind, nothing could shake his belief in Max's loyalty. Max was not just a police dog, but a confident, a tireless protector. Every time he thought of the dog, Mark felt warm in his heart, as if Max was always by his side, regardless of distance and time. But the distance only made him feel more empty. One day, while Mark was sitting in his cell, he suddenly heard footsteps stopping outside the iron door. At first, he thought it was just another police officer passing by. But when the footsteps stopped again and voices were heard outside, Mark realized something was wrong. His cell door opened, and Sarah walked in. She didn't come alone, but standing next to her was a character that Mark couldn't believe. Mark was stunned, unable to believe his eyes. Max stood right next to Sarah, his head slightly tilted, his eyes shining with love as he looked at him. The dog didn't bark or run over, but just stood there as if waiting for his owner to welcome him. "Max, is this real?" Mark whispered, unable to believe this miracle. He stood up, his legs trembling slightly. His heart was pounding in his chest. Max, the dog he loved, was here, right in front of him. Sarah smiled softly, looking at Mark and then back at Max. Max didn't give up Mark. He was always there, outside the gate, every day, waiting. He knew that one day he would come back. Mark took a step closer to Max, then finally knelt down, his trembling hands gently stroking the dog's soft fur. Max closed his eyes, felt his master's hand, and gently licked Mark's hand as if nothing had changed between them. The dog didn't need to say a word, but his presence said it all. Max's loyalty was beyond understanding. Mark realized that no matter what, no matter how difficult the circumstances, the friendship and loyalty between him and Max would remain unchanged. Nothing could tear them apart. Mark choked up, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. "I was so careless, Max. I can't imagine life without you by my side. Thank you for always being there, waiting for me." Sarah stood by, saying nothing, just silently observing the emotional interaction between Mark and Max. She understood that this friendship, the unconditional love that Max had for Mark, was the most important thing to him right now. That was the motivation for Mark to continue fighting. In the following days, Max continued to visit Mark, each visit bringing him endless hope and comfort. The days in prison seemed unbearable, but every time he looked into Max's loyal eyes, Mark had more strength to stand firm. One evening, as Mark sat in his cell, He thought about the memories he and Max had shared together. The times they had raced against time to rescue innocent people, the times Max had faced danger to protect him. All those memories made Mark's heart ache, but also gave him a strong belief in justice. He looked into Max's eyes, and as if the dog understood, Max gently approached and placed his head on Mark's lap. Max's eyes were not only shining stones, but also a look of determination, unconditional support. Mark felt a strong bond deep in his heart, an unbreakable connection, an unforgettable loyalty. Max was not just a dog, but a friend, a protector, a family. And Mark knew that he would never be alone. No matter how far away he was in prison, no matter how far away the outside world was, Max was always there, always waiting for him. "We will make it, Max. Thank you for not giving up on me," Mark whispered in the night, and in that moment, he knew that his fight was not over. Together with Max, he would fight not only for himself, but also for everything this dog had done for him. Their friendship would overcome all challenges, and one day, they would stand together, overcoming all difficulties to continue their journey. Every day in prison, Mark wonders if he can find a way to escape the death penalty without committing this crime. Although Sarah and Max offer him some hope, the battle against time is still pressing on him every day. The evidence in his case is still lacking and unclear. The powerful people in the city seem to always be trying to hide the truth. But Mark, now, is no longer fighting alone. He has the unwavering support of Sarah and the boundless loyalty of Max. After Mark has met Max for several visits, Sarah knows that she cannot rely on old clues alone. She feels the need to dig deeper, find new evidence, and find a truth that the powerful people have deliberately hidden. She cannot let Mark suffer this injustice. But she also knows that this is not easy, and time is passing quickly. One day, while Sarah was reviewing the documents, she suddenly noticed a detail that no one had noticed before. A small trace in the report about the location of the bullet that hit the victim. The location did not match the testimony of the witnesses. It seemed that the people behind the case had intentionally blurred important traces, making them impossible to detect. Sarah noticed the abnormality in this case and decided to find answers. Sarah spent many hours approaching witnesses in the case, but they did not easily tell the truth. Many were threatened or bribed. But Sarah still did not give up. She felt that she could not stand by while her friend, an honest, dedicated person, was being wrongly convicted. And just as she was about to retreat, an unexpected clue appeared. Sarah received a notification from an unknown source. This person revealed that there was a video in an abandoned lot, which the police had not previously examined carefully. The video showed someone else, not Mark, committing the murder. It was hidden and not included in the case file. When Sarah and a team of investigators arrived at the abandoned site the source had pointed out, her heart began to pound. She knew this could be the key to unlocking the truth. The team began searching everywhere, every nook and cranny of the old warehouse. And finally, after hours of searching, they discovered an old camera thrown away in a dark corner. Sarah carefully brought the camera back to the lab, where experts restore damaged videos. When the final video was played back, everything was clearer than ever. The video showed a tall, masked man shooting at a victim in a dark alley. And most importantly, it wasn't Mark. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief, but her excitement was quickly replaced by anxiety. If this video can help Mark prove his innocence, then the people behind this case will definitely not let it go unnoticed. They will do everything they can to prevent the truth from being revealed. With this new evidence in hand, Sarah faces a difficult decision. Can she get this video out and clarify the truth, or will she face unimaginable danger from the forces that want to hide it? While Sarah faces this important decision, Mark still waits for salvation. He has heard about the progress in his case through his meetings with Sarah, but nothing is certain yet. He believes that one day, justice will be served. But he keeps wondering, will there be enough time before the death penalty is carried out? Can Max help him overcome this final challenge? But in the moment when he was struggling with those questions, Max's loyalty and resilience gave him strength. Mark remembered the times when Max had always been there for him, protecting him and giving him the confidence that they could overcome any challenge. Finally, Sarah decided to take the video to court, even though she knew that this could put her in danger from powerful people. She called Mark in and informed him of the latest developments. "I have something for you, Mark," Sarah said as she handed him a USB drive containing the video. and we will not let these people continue to hide the truth. Mark looked at Sarah, feeling everything inside him rise. Finally, he could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and now he was just one step away from bringing the truth to light. And in that moment, he knew that no matter how difficult things were, he would not give up this fight. Together with Sarah and Max, they will stop at nothing until justice is served. After Sarah brings the video of someone else killing someone in Mark's case, everything begins to change. Although the video is important evidence that can save Mark, the dark forces that Sarah and Mark are facing will never give up their power easily. They know that if the truth is revealed, everything will collapse, and they will lose everything they have built. Sarah and Mark decide to keep the video a secret and not make it public until everything is well prepared. They understand that if they reveal it too soon, the people behind this case may quickly erase all the evidence, leaving them back to zero. The two decide to have a clear and perfect plan to bring the video to light in the safest way possible. However, while they are preparing to act, Max does something no one could have expected. One evening, while Sarah is working late reviewing documents, she hears a knock on the door. Surprised, she opened the door and couldn't believe her eyes when she saw Max standing there, eyes shining, as if waiting to be given an important mission. Max had not just stood outside the prison gates like before, but now he had entered the prison, somehow finding Sarah. She couldn't understand what had led to this action. Max seemed to understand that he was no longer just a loyal dog, but the only friend who could help Mark through this ordeal. Sarah walked closer to Max, gently stroked his head, and looked into his intelligent eyes. "You want to help us, right, Max?" Sarah whispered, sensing something strong in Max's gaze. And then, like before, the dog began to lead the way. Max ran towards a small room in her office that Sarah had never noticed before. It was an old room, rarely noticed. When she opened the door, everything seemed to have changed strangely. The dusty room contained a collection of long-forgotten documents and objects. But among them, there was one item that made her unable to believe her eyes, an old black box, but without any trace of dust or time. Max stood there, looking at the box as if waiting for her to open it. Sarah carefully opened the box, and inside was a series of previously unknown documents, reports, and photos. What surprised her was that among these documents, there were notes related to Mark's investigation, but not from the official police, but stolen documents from a source outside the government. One of the documents was a report describing how the high-ranking officers had manipulated this case from the beginning. She realized that these people were not only involved in the victim's death, but also had connections to a large criminal organization. These people had created a false story, using Mark as a pawn to cover up their own wrongdoings. They wanted not only to destroy Mark, but also to eliminate anyone who might threaten their existence. Sarah quickly flipped through the other documents and discovered a plan she had never seen before. These documents indicated that Mark's case was not an accident, but part of a larger conspiracy. The people behind the case were not simply a group of small-time criminals, but an organization that was trying to manipulate the legal system and push those who did not fit in their path. Sarah realized that if she didn't act quickly, things would be over. However, she couldn't face these powerful people alone. She needed the help of her friends, especially Mark and Max. That evening, when Sarah got home and began to review these documents again, she felt the urgency of the moment. She realized that not only Mark, but Max was also engaged in a battle from which there was no turning back. The video had helped them get on the right track, but there were many more challenging steps to overcome. Sarah decided to contact her trusted associates and planned to report this incident to an independent investigative organization, unaffected by those dark forces. She knew that, this time, she had to do everything to protect the truth and bring these people to light. But while Sarah was worried about the risks that awaited, Max showed no fear. The loyal dog was unfazed and continued to do his duty, protect his master and his friends. With courage and perseverance, Max once again proved that he was more than just a dog. He was the best friend and protector Mark had. In that moment, Mark felt something profound. No matter where he was, no matter how the world changed, Max would always be his guiding light. And when the truth was revealed, Mark and Max would fight together, not only to save themselves, but to protect everything they believed in. As Sarah, Mark, and Max get closer to uncovering the truth about the case, the danger becomes more apparent. Sarah has gathered enough evidence to go to court, but she knows that if this evidence is leaked, the whole plan will collapse in an instant. The people behind the case are all too familiar with manipulating situations and controlling everything. They can use any means to prevent the truth from being discovered. One evening, as Mark sits in his cell, he feels an indescribable unease. Sarah has prepared to hand over important documents and videos to the authorities, but it feels like something is about to happen, like a storm is coming. Although he doesn't say it, Mark feels a change in the air around him. Max's visits only make him feel that things are changing. The next morning, Sarah suddenly receives a call from a confidential source. This person warned that there was a grand plan to prevent any attempt to reveal the truth. Sarah rushed to see Mark, bearing bad news. She knew that it was time for them to act, but this action would not be easy. As Sarah and Mark discussed their plan of action, they realized that Max had led them to an important decision. The dog had been constantly appearing and suddenly dragging Mark towards a corner of the prison visiting area. Sarah watched Max and sensed the seriousness of his actions. It seemed that the dog was trying to warn them that something was about to happen. Just as Max dragged Mark to the place, a shrill sound rang out, and a loud bang broke the silence of the visiting room. Mark raised his head and saw a group of strangers rushing in. They were unidentified people, dressed in black uniforms and carrying weapons. Before Mark could react, they had restrained him and Sarah. In a panic, Sarah cried out, but Max did not hesitate. The dog rushed in, charging straight at the group of people who were restraining Sarah. Max was not an ordinary fighting dog. Although he was bound by human weakness, in this situation, Max had become a warrior. Nothing could stop him from protecting Sarah and Mark. One of the intruders raised his hand to attack Sarah, but Max rushed in like a ball of fire, biting hard on his hand. Max's roar echoed, causing all the attackers to take a step back. Max, with his boundless strength and loyalty, stopped them at this crucial moment, giving Sarah and Mark the chance to escape from the group of strangers. However, during the fight, Max received a serious injury. A bullet accidentally hit the dog when the others attacked. Blood began to flow from the wound, but Max did not retreat. The dog still kept his fighting spirit, protecting his best friend until the last moment. Max. No, Mark shouted, but the dog only looked at him with a determined gaze, as if saying that he would not give up. Sarah panicked and took Max out of the fighting area and immediately bandaged his wound. Meanwhile, Mark also tried to stay calm, shouting to protect Max. The group of strangers quickly retreated when they saw Max's fierce resistance, but none of them saw the true strength of the dog's loyalty and friendship for Mark. After the attack was over, Sarah and Mark took Max to the nearest hospital. Max's injuries were not serious, but fortunately, the doctor was able to save the dog's life. During the entire treatment, Mark never took his eyes off Max for a second, holding the dog's paw tightly, feeling its weak breath. He knew that Max had sacrificed himself for him, and he would never forget this. As Max lay in a hospital bed, with his wounds slowly healing, Mark decided not to wait any longer. He had to act immediately to bring the people behind his case to light. Sarah, although still worried about Max's condition, agreed with Mark's decision. They knew that the longer they waited, the more danger they would face. These people would not stop until they were completely stopped. With Max's determination and strength, Sarah and Mark prepared for the biggest confrontation of their lives. Challenges lie ahead, but now Mark is fighting not only for himself, but also for Max, his loyal friend who sacrificed everything to protect him. Max lay on the hospital bed, his wound bandaged, but he still had to continue to be monitored. Despite the pain, the dog's eyes were still steadfast and strong, as if saying that nothing could make him give up this fight. While Mark was worried about Max's condition, he knew that their fight was not over. The people behind the case had not yet been brought to light, and there were still many challenges ahead. Sarah sat beside Mark, looking at Max, who lay quietly. She felt the tension in the air, but also noticed the strong solidarity between the three friends. Despite being attacked and injured, Max was still their greatest hope. This dog was not only a protector, but also Mark's most loyal friend, an indispensable part of the fight against injustice. Mark, we need to act as soon as Max recovers. You know that if we don't get to the truth quickly, these people won't stop, Sarah said, her eyes filled with determination. You have to trust in the help of your friends and what we've found. We can do this. Mark looked at Sarah, sensing the strength in her words. He knew that she was a loyal friend he could rely on, but it wasn't just Sarah. Max, though unable to speak, was there, demonstrating the strength of unconditional loyalty. Mark felt a new energy surge through him, a fierce determination that they would fight until the truth was revealed. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for always being here. Thank you, Max, for not giving up, Mark whispered, looking deep into Max's eyes. We will do this, and we will win. After Max gradually recovered, Sarah prepared all the evidence needed to bring the case to an independent investigation organization. The documents they found, along with important video, would be powerful weapons to confront the manipulators of the case. But before everything was made public, Mark and Sarah needed to protect it from the bad guys. Late one night, while Sarah was sorting through the documents and preparing the report, Max did something strange. The dog stood up from the hospital bed, even though his wound was not completely healed, and walked towards the door. Max stopped, turned his head to look at Mark and Sarah as if asking them to follow him. Mark couldn't help but be moved by Max's perseverance. The dog had endured so much pain, but still didn't give up. Max, do you want to go out? Mark asked, but Max just looked at him with a determined gaze, as if saying it was time to act. Sarah stood up, walked to Max's side, and looked into the dog's determined eyes. We can't sit still any longer. Max is right, we need to act. Mark made up his mind immediately. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. Their bond had been strengthened, and nothing could stop the determination of these three friends. Max was no longer a mere dog, but a fellow warrior, a steadfast friend ready to defend the truth. While Max took the lead, Mark and Sarah followed. They began to plan how to confront those who were trying to hide the truth. Before they entered the final confrontation, Mark looked at Max and Sarah with unwavering determination. We can't give up. Letting these people escape punishment is unacceptable. The truth will be revealed, no matter how difficult it is. The three of them stood firm, together entering the greatest battle of their lives. They knew that unity, friendship, and loyalty would be the strongest weapons to help them overcome all difficulties. Although the road ahead was full of challenges, once united, they would never back down. The day Sarah, Mark, and Max had been waiting for had finally arrived. Everything was ready. With solid evidence in hand, they had decided to go public. This fight was no longer about Mark himself, but about justice and bringing to light those who had manipulated his life. The night before, as they sat together discussing their final plans, Max's eyes were steady and never left Mark's. The dog seemed to be saying that everything would be okay. Mark smiled slightly when he saw Max. This dog gave him all the strength he needed to continue. Okay, everything is ready, Sarah said, her voice firm. We only have one more step left. But remember, this is not an easy fight. These people will not leave us alone. But we cannot go back. Mark looked into Sarah's eyes and then turned to Max, the friend he had been through so much with. I am ready. We will do this together. The next day, they went to the court. A heavy feeling filled the air. Each step brought them closer to justice, but also closer to danger. All three of them knew that if the people behind the case found out that they were bringing evidence to light, there would be extremely dangerous acts of revenge. However, they could not stop. They could not let the truth continue to be buried. When they entered the court, an unusual silence filled the auditorium. All eyes were on Mark. Although he had prepared carefully, Mark still felt a little nervous. However, when he saw Max standing beside him, his eyes filled with determination, his heart gradually became firm. The debate began. Sarah stood up and presented the evidence they had collected. She did not miss any detail, from the important video to the hidden documents. The people in the courtroom began to realize that this case was not an accident, but an organized conspiracy. The court officials were also surprised by the evidence they had never seen before. Mark felt everyone's eyes on him. Although he could not say anything during the argument, he knew that the truth had been revealed. Each piece of evidence was like a brick falling down, forming a wall of protection for him. The court's attitude began to change, and Mark felt relief gradually replace his previous fear. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. Just when everyone thought the trial was going in the right direction, one of the powerful people in the room, who had always been considered innocent, stood up and made a shocking statement. This person, one of the masterminds behind the case, tried to prevent Mark from being exonerated. He began to mumble threats and say that the case was not what it was presented to be. However, before he could finish, a roar rang out from the back of the room. Max, who had been standing silently beside Mark since the beginning of the trial, suddenly ran up, his face full of protection, and he let out a warning roar. The people in the courtroom turned, surprised by the dog's actions. But Mark looked into Max's eyes and knew that this was the moment. Max advanced on the man, his eyes burning with loyalty and determination to protect his master. The dog did not bark or attack, but its powerful presence made the man unable to continue. The entire room held its breath, and for a strange moment, it was Max's loyalty that stopped the man from continuing his lies. As a dog, Max couldn't say a word, but his actions in that moment said it all. He protected Mark without explanation, proving that their friendship was priceless. Mark, feeling a surge of strength from Max's unconditional loyalty, couldn't help but be moved. In his entire life, he had never felt so loved and protected as he did at that moment. At this moment, no one could deny the truth. The entire courtroom knew that justice was being served, and it was the courageous actions of his loyal friend Max that put things right. In the end, Mark was exonerated, and the people behind the crime were brought to justice. Mark, Sarah, and Max had won. They had not just won a trial, but a hard-fought battle for truth and justice. As they walked out of the courtroom, Mark smiled at Max, thanking the dog for never giving up. He knew that no matter what happened, Max would always be his indispensable friend in life. Unity, loyalty, and friendship, that was what got them through it all. The day Mark was released was a day he would never forget. When he stepped out of his cell and saw the sunlight for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had been born again. But not only because of the freedom, but also because of what he had been through, and especially because of Max. Every step he took was tied to the loyalty of his dog, his friend who had never stopped protecting him, even when the situation became dangerous and uncertain. Max had not only saved him in life and death moments, but had also been an endless source of encouragement and strength to help Mark overcome the dark days in prison. Max, with his acts of love and loyalty, helped him find faith in himself, in justice, and in life. That was what Mark would never forget. When Mark saw Sarah waiting for him outside the courthouse, she smiled, her eyes filled with pride. Sarah had been a wonderful companion throughout this arduous journey. She did not give up on him, no matter how hopeless it seemed. Together with Max, they formed an unbreakable force. Their friendship and loyalty brought them victory in the end. "We did it, Mark," Sarah said, her eyes unable to hide her joy. "Everything we've been through, it's all worth it now. You deserve this freedom." Mark looked at Max, his eyes filled with gratitude. "It wasn't me, Sarah. It was Max. This dog saved me, not only in dangerous situations, but throughout my life. Without him, I don't know if I could stand." Max, standing next to Mark, looked at him with a determined and loving gaze. No matter how much pain and fatigue he had gone through, the dog would not leave Mark's side. He knew that no matter how much the world changed, their friendship would never change. After leaving the courthouse, Mark, Sarah, and Max walked through the park together. Everything around them seemed to come alive after so many years of hardship. The air was fresh, the trees were green, and their laughter mixed with the joy of new life. Mark felt like everything was starting over. And this time, he was not alone. He had Sarah, he had Max. Mark knew that, no matter how challenging life was, he and Max would always stand by each other. It was an unbreakable bond, a friendship that transcended all barriers and time. And as he watched Max run beside him, his strong legs making their way through each path, Mark felt something deep. Loyalty was more than a simple act. It was a commitment, a promise that would never change. In the days that followed, Mark and Max began to rebuild their lives. He is determined to use his career and influence to help others who have been wronged, and to be an example to those who are facing adversity. Max will always be his companion in every step of the way, a source of encouragement for him to never give up the fight for justice. No matter what difficulties they face in the future, Mark knows that nothing can stop them. They have won a hard-fought battle, and now Mark can smile, feeling true happiness when being with his beloved friends. Especially Max. Max's undying loyalty has helped them overcome all challenges. And they will continue their journey, fighting for truth and justice with unwavering loyalty. Because this friendship will last forever, not just in the present moment, but forever.